Okay, so we're recording now. Okay, Ruben, you had a question? No? No question? Okay. So I'll let you guys work on those questions for a few minutes. Okay, so how's everybody doing? Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll sing the usual song, which is if you don't know the answer, raise your hand. If you don't know the answer, raise your hand. If you really don't know it and you need some help to show it, if you don't know the answer, raise your hand. So so just don't lower them, keep them up, and keep them up because we gotta talk. Okay. Okay. And Jesse. Okay. So okay. Jesse, do you have a mic this morning? If you don't have a mic, just say you don't have a mic in the chat. Jesse? Okay, well, how about Danny? We haven't talked to him in a while, Danny.
Morning. Hello?
You there, Danny?
Yeah.
Okay, well, either
Hello?
Oh no, I can't hear you.
I'm talking.
You have a mic? Oh, you can hear Danny, but I can't. Hold on, wait a minute. Maybe I'm having some technical difficulties of my own. That's interesting. So you guys can hear me though, right? Because you guys obviously raised your hands. Okay, I say no then. Okay, Danny.
Yes. Morning.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Pretty good for a pandemic, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, my personal life is going great.
Well, yeah. It's not the Black Death.
No.
It's just, you know, lockdown.
Yeah.
So could be a lot worse.
I'm learning guitar.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I
Very
just started
nice.
yesterday. I learned 4 chords.
All right. Well, you
Yeah.
know what? Okay, this is inside um joke, but that's probably all you need.
Well, I got D, C, F, and E, I think.
Yeah. Well, so the ones that you really want,
Hmm.
and you got most of them, but you want G,
Hmm.
C, D, and E, but most people just will do like E minor seventh, which is just taking one like finger off.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many songs that you can play with that
Yeah.
chord progression.
My middle
So
finger kills.
yeah. Hey, listen. Um, yeah, art's beautiful and beauty is pain.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, but so um, let's go ahead and we'll return to the questions. And so the where did you struggle with the first one, Danny? Do you remember the procedure for the leader follower model? Because we kind of went
No,
pretty
I
detailed last time. You were here last time, right?
I was. I remember
Okay.
how to do the total industry output for the for like one of the other assignments, but for this one, I just don't know what
Yeah. Well, just remember, it actually kind of starts out the same way. How are you doing with Cornell?
Not that well. I've been doing Monopoly and the other one trying to sharpen my skills with that, but
Okay.
for now I'm
Well,
not doing well at all.
well, the key concept for both Cornell and the Stackelberg leader follower model are the same.
Mm.
And if you can't get to that part, then you're just dead in the water. And that is, you have to be able to formulate the reaction function. Um, and and in this case, it's in some sense it's a little bit easier because you only have to do the reaction function for the follower. That's the first step.
Okay.
Reaction function for the follower. But you don't have the reaction function for the follower. Um, And then the other like key concept is to formulate the reaction function, you have to find the residual demand for um, the firm. And so you firm two's residual demand, and then you take the marginal revenue from that residual demand function, and you set it equal to the marginal cost for firm two, and
Yeah.
that gives you the reaction function for firm two. So why don't we start with the residual demand for firm two. So a lot of people. So Robin, well, I'll switch. Danny, you can keep your mic on if you want. If you want to chime in, you don't have to. But I'll switch to Robin. Robin raised his hands. Robin, do you have your mic today?
Oh yeah, I do.
So you heard what I said to Danny, right?
Yes.
And did any of it make any sense to you?
I was kind of I'm still working out because you said 8 through 10, so I was kind of working on 10, but I do have the equation for 8 that you were asking for.
Yeah. So that's good. And I will say this, and that is that and I'm trying to move things around here a little bit on my screen so I can see better. But you'll notice I'm gonna scroll down a little bit that 11 is the profit for firm two, so you need to know firm two's output anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, you can't solve 8 until you really solve 10. You have to figure out what's the total output for firm 1, and then the total output for firm 2, and then add them together. So did you get to the point where you had formulated the reaction function for firm 2?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's good. So why don't you go ahead and you can type in the chat your reaction function, and I'm gonna pause the recording for just a minute. It's not going to be because the Corno firm, is otherwise different. So there's a lot of ways in which the Corno model treats the firms symmetrically, and so there is a true first mover advantage, and that's pretty interesting. So does anybody have any questions about what we've done so far, with respect to questions 10, 11, or 12?
I have a question in that problem we just did.
Yeah.
What equation did we put the reaction function back into?
Okay, that's a good question, Ian, and I'm actually going to try to show here and see if I can do this. So you can see the whiteboard now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. Actually, I'll do it this way. Okay, so this is what Robin typed into the chat, and I'll kind of spread it out a little bit. Okay, so this first line is the residual demand for the follower, and it's in its reduced form, and he just simplified it, and then the equation for it's below there, you can see. So this answers your question, I think.
Yeah, I thought the the 95.33 minus 11, I thought that was like a new equation, but it's just the same.
Yeah.
Equation.
So yeah, I guess the one thing that I'll write it in here. Well, I take it back. I gotta make sure I get this is for the leader, my labels right. And the first thing that he did was okay. So this is the reaction function for the follower. And there's the residual demand for the leader, and you can see he put the reaction function in where normally Q2 would have been here, the second, or I guess it's the third term in the reaction or in the residual demand before it's simplified. So you can see where he put in the reaction function of the follower there. Can you see that I have it highlighted? I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
good.
yeah. And then this line here is just the marginal revenue of the leader, which is firm 1, is equal to the marginal cost of firm 1. And then from there, you can go ahead and solve for the profit maximizing level of output for firm 1. And here, he's just substituting the result back into the reaction function to get Q2 star. And there we go.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So does anybody have any questions about?
Yeah, real quick. I don't think we looked at number 9, which is the price. So if we could just see, or if I could just see the answer really quickly, because isn't that just plugging in Q1 into the PRB1?
Well, so you're talking about
9.
Number 9. Okay. So yeah, so what price will prevail in the market? But okay, talk to me a little bit more, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your suggestion? You wouldn't do Q1, right? Because in order to find the price, you need the total industry quantity.
Oh,
right?
so okay, yeah. So you plug it in the total. So
Yeah,
basically, you would input it'd be 95.33 minus 11.73 times 3.99.
well, no, see, okay, so check it out, right?
Okay.
The inverse demand is just 138 minus 17
Oh
Q.
yeah, you just plug it in that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard maybe to keep track a little bit, but hopefully you will eventually, like kind of like it'll all click
Yeah.
nicely. And but the main point is that you know all of the things that you've done with respect to the residual demand is really a fiction. It's a useful one. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with calling it a fiction, but the market doesn't reflect in any way residual demand. Residual demand is something that each of the firms construct based on their analysis of the market. They're saying, oh, if my competitor produces this much, then there'll be this much left over for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, that's a really sort of like easy thing to do if you're just talking about, like, for example, if you say, oh, I think my competitor is going to produce, like we did in Cornell, right? I think my competitor is going to produce 100 units. So, anything above 100 units is mine. Well, it's really, if you think the industry or the market is going to consume 200 units, then you have 100 units left over for you. You know
Mm-hmm.
that. But in truth, right, how much the market's going to demand depends upon the price that ends up being charged. So it's a function, right? And so you
Mm-hmm.
subtract off what you believe your competitor is going to produce from the whole demand function, and you end up with that residual demand function. So that's what you're doing as you're working through these problems. But the residual demand itself, doesn't necessarily need to reflect what the true market price would be, though. I'm pretty sure, I've never done it, but if you formulate the residual demand properly, you shouldn't have that like there shouldn't be an issue. The residual demand is connected to the true market demand. So if you plug you notice in your residual demand for firm 1, you just have the quantity for firm 1.
Yeah.
So if you were to plug in the quantity for just firm 1 into the residual demand for firm 1, once you find out what it is, you should get the same price as you do from plugging in the whole industry quantity into the market demand. They should come out to be the same price.
Yeah.
But from an analytical point, you wouldn't really want to do that because in the end, right, once you get the total output for the industry and you get the industry price, then you want to begin to do analysis at the market level. So like, for example, if you're going to answer the question, and we'll scroll down a little bit, but how much consumer surplus is created in the industry? Well, there, the residual demand isn't going to help you. Because remember, consumer surplus is the area beneath the market demand and above the price consumers pay. So anyway, get the total quantity and plug it back into the market demand, and you won't ever go wrong. Okay. So was there another question?
Yeah, can I just see the answer for 9 just to double check that my work's correct?
Yeah. Boom.
All right, all good.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So so we talked about these questions, and why don't we go ahead and do question number 11, because we didn't do it last time. You guys should be able to do this. So this is more like practice. It's not something crazy or new. It's just kind of practice. So why don't you guys go ahead and do questions 11, 12, and let's see. Okay, yeah. So do 11, 12, and 13. And you guys can see 11, 12, and 13, right? I imagine. I think I can drag the window a little bit more. Okay. And I'll give you guys like 10 minutes to do that. Does anybody have any questions for me before I let you guys work on that stuff? Okay. So just to go ahead and review where we are, I'll remind ourselves. So this is our industry output, and there's our market price, and that's the quantity for firm 1 only. And this is our answer for firm 2. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about how the calculation for number 11 was performed? Okay. Do you guys all agree? Okay. So let's go ahead and sing our song one more time. So if you don't know the answer, raise your hand. You guys kind of already know the answer because you saw it. But if you don't know the answer, raise your hand. If you're not sure how it was gotten. So Danny, Robin. Okay. Leon, do you have your mic today? Because we haven't talked to you yet. Leon? Oh, my headset mic won't work. That's just a bummer. What about you, Trevor? How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay. So you don't know the answer. But can you tell us what you think? Did you make some progress? So it's the profits of firm 2, right?
The profits of firm 2. Yeah. No, I didn't make any progress on it.
None? Okay, well then let's talk through this. So what's profit?
Profit is, I don't know, like the definition.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Shoot. I don't know.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, let's be intuitive then. You're running a company.
Mm-hmm.
See, I've told people a lot of times, right? So having good quantitative skills, being comfortable with algebra and calculus, at least a little bit, is very helpful for being an economist. But I think the number one, like, best skill is having a vivid imagination. And I mean, like, vivid so that you could really put yourself in that situation. Or if you've ever played The Sims, maybe that would work too. But, you just have to really, like, think about it. So, Trevor, if you could run a business, what would your business be? Hopefully it's a small business, but whatever.
If I could run a business,
Yeah.
no idea. Never thought about running a business before.
Oh well, you're if you're going to be an economist, that's at least half of your,
Yeah.
it's consumer and producer theory. We're producer theory now. So, pick a business, any business. I'll give you a hot business right now.
Hot business.
A hot business.
Selling stuff online.
Well, actually, that's you're right. So Amazon, but that's kind of difficult because a lot of that is, like, if you think about Amazon, a lot of it, those products aren't their own. It's like second-party retailer stuff. So that makes it more complicated. But how about testing people to see if they have coronavirus?
That would be a good business.
It is actually. It's going to be huge. Everybody's talking about it. That, like, that's going to be the new thing. So Trevor's lab, right? You're trying to calculate profits for Trevor's lab, right? So let's, you got to pick a period of time. So let's say your weekly profit, right? So and remember, you being the owner of Trevor's lab, the profit is actually what goes to the owner, right?
Yeah.
So what's your intuition for how you might go about doing that calculation?
I guess your profit would be like your gains after you pay for all your costs.
Yeah, right. So your gains, but what are you gaining? Think about it. So people come into your lab. Let's assume it's a purely private lab, which I think actually, as we go forward, there might be some purely private labs that pop up. So people can, this is Trevor's private lab. People come in there and they're like, Trevor, I want a coronavirus test. So what do?
Test them.
Yeah. But you just, like, you're like, yeah, sure, man, no problem. Just hang out. I'll test you. No big deal. Good job, buddy. And then that's it. No, right? They're going to come in, and what are you going to gain from them?
Money.
Yeah, you're going to charge them, right? So you have money that you're bringing into the firm, and it's based on how many tests that you perform, and we said in a week, right? And also what you charge for those tests. So, that amount of money you bring in has a special name. Do you know what we call it in economics?
Profit.
No, because remember, you said it's the gain
Gains, yeah.
after you pay for your costs, right? So the money you're just bringing in the door is what we call your revenue,
Oh, revenue. Yeah.
right?
Sounds about right.
Well, it's exactly right. It's not about right. It's exactly right. And so if you were an accountant or an economist, you would count the revenue in the same way, just what people are paying for you for the product or the service that you're selling. So in order to calculate revenue, you have to have a price for your product. And if you know the quantity that you're going to sell, you just multiply. Because, right, if you're charging $100 per test and you do 10 tests, then your revenue would be how much?
Wait, say that one more time.
Okay, $100 per test.
Space test. Yeah.
$100 per test, and you do 10 tests.
1,000.
Yeah, so you brought in $1,000 worth of revenue, and then you have to subtract off
Your costs.
your costs, right?
Yeah.
So our definition for profit is total revenue minus total cost. Okay. So yeah, you have to know the definition of profit. So let's go ahead and we'll work with that. We're gonna have total revenue minus total cost, and then the information we have in the problem will enable you to calculate that. So for example, if we go back to question number 9, we know that the market price is $70.17. Can you see that on your screen?
Yes.
Right. And this is the profit for firm 2. So we don't really know, but Robin calculated it for us before. But there's not, like, I can't just pull down a tab here. We know the total industry output is 3.99 for question number 8. So that's output for firm 1 plus output for firm 2. And from question number 10, we know that firm 1 produces 2.14. So the 3.99 minus the 2.14 leaves out leaves what's left over for firm 2 is the 1.85.
Yeah.
So we can calculate revenue for firm 2. So why don't you go ahead and do that for us? Calculate the revenue for firm 2, and then I'll have somebody else work on the cost. Okay. Okay. So we'll come back to you in a second, Trevor. So who else wants to help me with the cost part of it? Ian, you want to help? Ian?
Sure.
Okay. So Trevor's working on the revenue. You can work on the cost for us.
Okay, so how would I begin to do that part?
Well, right, we said total revenue minus total cost.
Right. Okay.
And what are the components of total cost?
Oh, fixed cost plus variable cost.
Yeah, you
So
got it.
We have the fixed cost.
Yeah, so the fixed cost is
109.
well, so hold on, wait a minute. For firm 2, right? It's question
Okay,
11.
208. There we go.
Yeah, 208. And then the variable cost. You know how to do the variable cost?
I sort of remember from doing the Cornell, we have to we'll draw the picture, I think would help, right?
Yeah, if you don't draw the picture, I mean, like, you could, like, just do it in your head,
Yeah,
I
okay.
guess. But I would draw the picture just because, I like to draw pictures. They help me remember things. So what picture are you drawing right now?
Well, I'm drawing the one from Corno. Is that correct? The one with our.
Yeah, I mean, you could. Remember, there's this relationship between variable cost and marginal cost. And you got to remember that.
Oof.
So you don't have to like draw some independent Corno picture or do anything
Okay.
weird. In all of these cases where we're given marginal cost, but we have to calculate variable cost, then you just have to remember the relationship. Do you remember the relationship between marginal cost and
I'm struggling to remember right now. Yeah.
okay. Robin, do you want to help Ian out? Do you remember?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so what's the relationship between marginal cost and variable cost? We're given marginal cost, but we don't have variable cost.
The double?
Well, I think you subtract one from the other, right? Or
Well, no.
Okay.
So total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. That's true. But the variable costs and the marginal costs are related. Does anybody know? Anybody want to chime in? Nobody knows. What about you, Shelby? I saw you in the chat. Do you have your mic? Do you know? Do you remember? Okay. Yeah. Well, can you say it simpler? I mean, for the people that don't know calculus, they might not know how to integrate, but there's another way to say it a little bit simpler. Oh, Jin Kao said, yeah. So do you guys see in the chat what Jin said?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So it's the area under the marginal cost curve. Does that make sense, Ian? You must have remembered that.
Yeah,
from
I do.
somewhere.
I definitely remember.
Yeah. So what you should do is you should draw the marginal cost function for firm 2, which just is a straight line coming out of the origin. And then, so output. And, okay, tell me if this looks familiar. Do you see it, Ian? My picture?
I can't see it.
You can't?
No, I'm looking at the. I'm seeing Ignithium right now.
Yeah, can you see like my face?
Oh, yeah. I have to make the. There we go. Okay. Oh yeah, I see it now.
Does that make sense? Or does it look familiar? I mean,
That looks
or
familiar. Sure.
both. Makes sense and look familiar. Yeah. So you have to calculate the area of that triangle. And so Q2 we were given as 1.85, right? And so can you see my picture again?
Yes.
And so the base of that triangle, you just don't know its height, but you can calculate that, right? Because you're given, see, this is a graph of MC2. So are you good? Or
Is the straight line it's not 138 minus 17?
well, does it 138 minus 17 say MC on it?
No, but I wouldn't just have to put 1.8 5 into the 21Q.
Well, why not? That's the marginal cost curve, right? I mean, I don't know when you look at an equation like that, if like immediately you're like, I know how to graph that. But you should, because it's just a simple linear equation and it has, you know, an intercept of 0.
Okay,
It goes straight out of the origin. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you remember back when you took geometry in the 9th grade or something like that, but they call it a ray out of the origin, right? It's just this line right out of the origin. But yeah, I mean,
30, yeah, okay, 38.5. Is it 35.9 variable cost?
that sounds about right. I mean, I didn't put it in my calculator, but
So I did. I got.
But okay. Wait a minute. I thought you were giving me the height of the marginal cost curve.
Oh, the height was I got for 38.85.
Okay, 38.85, and then the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height.
Mhm.
So what did you end up getting for?
1.85 times 38.85 divided by 2. I got 35.9.
Yeah, so that sounds. I mean, if your calculation's right. So you have the variable cost is 35.9.
And then we add that to 208.
Okay.
That's 208. We got 243.9.
Okay.
244 basically.
Okay. So you say 35.9, and then the fixed cost is 208. And so you get for you can go ahead and put your calculation for total cost in the chat, and I would do TC is equal to VC plus FC, and then in the next line give us your total cost, your variable cost figure, and your fixed cost figure. Yeah. Which is equal to, so TC is equal to, okay, 243.9. Now I'm gonna assume that's right. Where's my picture? It looks fine. I mean, the only thing you could have goofed up on was potentially your calculation for variable cost, but we went through it together. So so you get 243.9. Now, Trevor, did you get us the revenue?
No, I did not. I wasn't too sure where to plug it in. I have in my notes.
Well, okay, you shouldn't be too complicated, right? You know, total revenue is price times quantity, and we're talking about the quantity from 2.
The 1.85.
Right? Yeah, and then what's the price?
70.17.
Yeah, so
just that times the 1.85.
Yeah. And don't let the numbers kind of goof you up. You might think, oh, 1.85, like that's too small level of output. But again, it could be 1.85 million barrels of oil sold at $70.17 a piece. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I got 129.81.
Okay, so you have the total revenue is 129.81, and that's $70.17 times 1.85. So I'm gonna show it. That's what you got?
Wait, where? Yeah, at the bottom, 129.81. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So go ahead and type it in the chat. and then calculate profit for us. So you can just do one line, you know, TR for total revenue is equal to 240 or 129.81, and then you do profit in the next line.
So profit was total revenue minus cost.
Yeah, total revenue minus total cost.
What's that? Negative 114. Why is it?
So what'd you get?
Negative 114.09.
Okay, you want to put it in the chat?
Yeah, that's what I was typing out right now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so Trevor and Ian, you guys get a clap. So, okay, so I got a little bit of a question for you guys. I don't know if anybody, and I think you kind of said it a little bit, Trevor. You were like, oh, it's negative. So the question is, do firms earn negative profits sometimes? Anybody want to?
I mean, I assume sometimes, yeah, like a bad quarter.
Yeah, like a lot of people are earning negative profits right now. Right? You know, like sometimes your revenue doesn't cover your costs and you lose money. And so negative profits we call losses, but they're still, it's the same calculation for profit and loss. And that happens sometimes. But I guess this is one kind of important idea that we should point out here, right? Is there any case that we've discussed where we know that negative profits can't happen? Anybody have an idea?
I guess if your fixed cost is negative, then that's like.
Well, there would never be a negative cost,
Right, okay.
because that's like somebody's
just a
giving you
guess.
money, you know, but okay. Well, I'll tell you guys, you don't remember, if you guys don't remember. In the long run, remember, profits have to be 0 or above, because the only reason why firms will sustain a loss is because they've got fixed costs that they can't get rid of, right? So, you know, we know that the firm at most could lose all of its fixed costs because it could just shut down, right? If it shuts down, it produces 0, but it still has to pay its fixed costs. But it only has fixed costs in the short run, because in the long run, it can get rid of its fixed costs by permanently exiting the industry. So, you know, businesses right now that don't have any customers because they're restaurants or something like that, they're still making their lease and their insurance payments and other things like that. And if they have a lease for 6 months, they just might be eating the cost of that. Now, I know that right now the federal government is stepping in and trying to help them with what they call rent or forbearance and give them loans to pay for the stuff like their insurance and whatever that they can't get out of. But in a typical situation, that doesn't happen. What happens if the business is doing poorly, they might close their doors for a period of time until demand improves. And there are lots of businesses, like I'll give you guys one really good example. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I just read about it this morning. But all of the help to small businesses, the legislation that was passed by Congress has a provision in it and says that no, and this was the language used in the news article, which I assume reflects the legislation from Congress. It says no morally questionable businesses are eligible for assistance. No morally questionable businesses. And one of the top businesses, because remember, even though marijuana is legal in the state of California, it's still illegal at the federal level. So none of the marijuana businesses are eligible for loans. So if you're a pot shop someplace out in San Bernardino and most of your customers are out of work for one reason or another, and so you have to close your doors, you still have to pay your rent and your lease payment if you're in a lease. So you can earn negative profits in the short run while you have to pay that rental payment, that lease payment. But then as soon as the lease is up, you could just let the location go and wait until the economy gets better and then plan to reopen. So you would have exited the industry and then plan to re-enter when things get better. But only in the short run can businesses earn negative profits. They can't earn negative profits in the long run. Okay, so that's the point I wanted to make. Okay, so what about question 12? This one should be a little bit more straightforward. So who has an answer for question 12? If you have an answer, go ahead and raise your hand. If you don't have an answer, don't raise your hand. Okay. So Aubrey, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. How are you?
Pretty good. Just okay, not better than that.
No, I'm good.
It's a beautiful day outside. Well, is it sunny where you are yet?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
me
sunny,
too.
actually. I don't know what the temperature is though. I haven't gone outside yet.
Yeah. So did you figure out what the consumer surplus was for number 12? Yeah.
I did not.
Okay. So do you have any questions about how to do that?
I think I'm overthinking it. So I think that my brain kind of blanked and I don't really remember how to find it. But
Okay. Well, remember, consumer surplus. Now, while it is the case that figuring out output for different sorts of industry structures, depends upon, is it monopoly, is it Cornell, is it Stackelberg? The consumer surplus one is always going to be the same because it's always the area below the demand curve and above the price that consumers pay, and then to the left of the quantity that they purchase.
Oh, right. Okay.
So can you calculate it for us really quickly?
It's gonna take me a while because I don't really know exactly what numbers I'm using.
Okay. Okay. Ian, you have your hand up. Did you calculate it for us? Are you still there, Ian?
Yeah,
Or no?
I was from earlier, but I can help out.
Okay.
What was the question? Sorry.
So so question number 12, how much consumer surplus was created?
Okay.
And so you guys can work on this together, but this is the picture that you should have. We have a demand curve downward sloping here. See, it's at 138, right? And then you have a price here from the leader follower model, which is $70.17. So that forms this triangle here, and that's the consumer surplus triangle.
So it looks like to me we just need to find where they intersect, and then we have the answer.
Well, yeah. And it would have been better for me to put that as a dashed line, but we already know where they intersect because I forget who it was, but I don't think it was you, but you or Robin or somebody like that told us that the total quantity, you plug that into demand, and that's where you get the price from. And we already know the total quantity.
I have the answer if you want me to put it in the chat.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? Okay, so Aubrey calculated the area of the triangle for us. And Aubrey, good job. So yeah, 135.32. Good job. So I want to point out to you guys that these last two questions, so question 13, question 14, they're a little bit more challenging, right? So how much deadweight loss is created by the leader follower industry structure? Does anybody have an idea about how we would answer that one? Greg, we haven't heard from you today. Why don't you tell us what you think? You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to think of a way to kind of guide myself through deadweight loss here because.
Well, let's talk about deadweight loss in the context of a monopoly and see if we can extend it from there. Because, you know, one of the things I'll tell you guys, it's really useful when you're thinking about new problems is to think about old problems that you understand well, right? And then, you know, like the concept of deadweight loss doesn't depend on monopoly or taxes or anything else like that. You just have this concept of deadweight loss, and then, you know, it's being extended to a new example, but it's not like something totally different. By the way, Ruben had his hand up for a minute. Ruben, are you there? Do you have a mic?
Yes, I do.
Did you have a comment or a question? And could you turn down your speakers a little bit because there's feedback?
Yeah.
So did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, like I knew like I don't know the problem, but you were really talking to Greg.
Oh, you know what? You're breaking up for some reason in your mic. I hear you for a minute and then it goes away. You probably don't have a headset, huh? I'm thinking
I
not.
don't.
No. So did you have a question? Because I hear you for like 15 seconds and then it goes off. Okay, it's okay. So I'll go ahead and go back to Greg, and if you want, you can type something in the chat, Ruben, because that'll work too. So Greg, did you have a chance to think about it a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that deadweight loss is like inefficiency and basically unattained, uncapitalized profits and revenues. So
Okay, I'm
I'm
not saying
just trying to like,
I agree with your definition.
well,
You're
isn't it
talking
just
really
like inefficiency?
you're talking really high level abstraction, and if you go super high, like if I just say it, okay, I'll give you an example, and this is a really good, you know, complaint that like you could have against anybody else. It's vague language, right? Because if I just say deadweight loss is inefficiency, have I really moved the ball forward at all? I don't think so, right? I just relabeled something.
No.
You know, if I like I say, you know, what's a circle? It's round. Well, what's something that's round? What's shaped like a circle, right? I just like I've chosen two you know, definitions that are highly dependent on one another in such a way that I haven't really made progress. So I'm not that I quibble with you that it's inefficiency, but we have to drill down and like say, okay, what's inefficiency? Like, what do we mean? And so that's why I said you might want to think about monopoly. If you can really crystallize in your mind, you know, what happens with deadweight loss and monopoly, then you might, you know what I mean? You
Well,
might.
deadweight loss in Monopoly, I mean, they're choosing to produce less.
Okay, that's good.
And so there is
Less compared to what?
compared to a competitive equilibrium
Yes.
quantity.
Yes. And what do we know about the competitive equilibrium that's special? It's
I don't know what you mean.
well, okay. Remember the first fundamental welfare theorem? We had it in class together. First fundamental welfare theorem tells us that competitive markets are always efficient, right? So
Oh,
there's
okay.
zero deadweight loss in competition, and it's always efficient. And then we had a definition of efficiency, which we said was, you know, maximizing total surplus. So under competition, you get the maximum amount of total surplus possible. You get the, you know, consumer surplus plus producer surplus together are as big as you can ever get under competition. So monopoly, like you said, they have less output, right?
Right.
So their measure of total surplus under monopoly is going to be smaller than total surplus under competition. And so what you guys might remember, you might not remember, but I'm reminding you right now, is that the deadweight loss is the change in total surplus. It's the change relative to what total surplus would have been under competition. That makes sense, Greg?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the reason why question 13 is a little bit of a challenge is in all of this so far, well, I don't know if it might have been done earlier, but well, you have the level question number 6 is a level of total surplus in duopoly. And then question 7 is the deadweight loss in duopoly. So you would have had to compute the competitive equilibrium already anyway, if you'd been going through this assignment question by question. But here, I guess it's just important to point out that in order to do this one, whenever you see deadweight loss, you have to compute the competitive outcome. And then you have to calculate the total surplus under competition. And then you have to calculate the total surplus under whatever market structure you have. And in this case, it's the Stackelberg-Leader or follower model. So anyway, you cannot do this without computing the competitive equilibrium. So I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just one question about how to find the competitive equilibrium. Your marginal costs, I get how they're the supply curves and all, but what if they were different? Leader and follower, I mean, like, they make industry, right? So you'd have to add them?
Yeah, just like we did before.
Okay.
Right, remember when we had two, like under the cartel, we did cartel and competition, and we had to add the marginal cost curves of we spent a lot of time doing that for cartel, right?
Okay, yeah.
And I just want to point out one thing, and that is that leader and follower are behaviors, they're strategies that are employed that are allowed by the market structure. And the costs are just like the costs of running their equipment and stuff like that. So they can have the same equipment and behave like competitors, or they could have the same equipment and behave like a monopoly cartel, or they could have the same equipment and behave like Cornell competitors, or they could have the same equipment and behave like leader followers. So in any case, or they could have the same equipment and behave like competitive firms. So the main point is that, yeah, with this information here, it's the same information as we had before when we were saying there were multiple firms that made up a competitive industry. They're just behaving like competitors. So you have the information that you need in order to compute the competitive equilibrium in this case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm giving it a shot right now.
Okay. So yeah, if I was going to do this one, the first thing I would say is that you got to compute the competitive equilibrium. You've got to get the joint marginal cost function, and that's going to be the supply curve under competition. And you go from there.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just doing like the inversion and whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a little bit of a. Luckily, in this case, the firm.
Not too bad.
Yeah, because the firms have identical marginal cost functions.
Yeah, for a competitive quantity, I got 5.018.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, my joint MC was 10.5Q.
Okay. That sounds fine then. And you found the intersection between those, and
Yeah, I just set them equal to each other.
Yeah.
The demand curve and the joint MC.
Okay. So I'm just gonna
Read it in the
say,
chat.
yeah. And for those of you, I don't know if anybody has any questions about this, what Greg did, but if you are really confused, then you'll have to go back to a couple of lectures ago for the monopoly cartel, where we added up the marginal cost curves for the firms to get the competitive supply. So, you know, this is a couple of lectures and an assignment ago.
So all this, this new quantity basically just gave us the height of that deadweight loss triangle, right?
Yeah.
Or-
So
or
I mean,
did we
like this is where I mean, what you are doing right now is here's demand, here's supply. I'm gonna assume that all your calculations are correct. So okay. So now I'm going to show you a picture that's a lie. Okay, but you just have to
Okay.
you just have to understand that sometimes lies are useful. Okay. So well, you know, because there's some concepts that are subtle and difficult to convey, and this is one of them. But this is the lie.
Yeah, okay, I have the same lie on my paper, so.
Yeah, okay. So, but you know, the reason it's a lie is, but it's to show you, okay, so this is about the right concept, but it's not quite right. And it's not quite right because really what you want is remember that deadweight loss, formally speaking, is the absolute value of the change in total surplus. So it's the total surplus under leader follower minus the total surplus under competition. So this is what you should have equation wise for deadweight loss. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and by the way, on the recordings, you guys can still see my face, right? So if I show you the pictures, that's recorded. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Good. So if you think about it, right? So total surplus is consumer surplus minus producer surplus. Okay. And we just calculated consumer surplus under the leader follower model in just in question 12. So we already have that. And in this case, it's totally fine. You can calculate total surplus as being under competition as being the area of this big triangle. That's not a big deal. The problem is that producer surplus under leader follower, right? Because under leader follower, there is no supply curve. I mean, I drew leader follower here, the quantity, but where it intersects with this joint marginal cost curve, it's irrelevant, because the joint marginal cost curve tells us what the variable costs are under competition. But in the case of leader follower, because the firms are producing different quantities, right? Under competition, if the firms are otherwise identical, they would be producing exactly the same quantities. Their marginal costs would always be equalized, and all of that stuff would generate the same level of variable costs, and you'd end up getting the same amount of producer surplus. But under leader follower, you have to, there is no picture. You just have to calculate producer surplus under leader follower. And since we have two firms, it's going to be the producer surplus for firm 1 plus the producer surplus for firm 2. And then you have to know, I'll just write that producer surplus is now this is a little bit hard, but it kind of, maybe it makes sense from the diagram that you saw for the supply curve for competition being the joint marginal cost curve. Because what producer surplus does is it ignores fixed costs. That's why producer surplus is not exactly profit, because the difference is that in producer surplus, remember, we're interested in how producers are doing in terms of benefiting from the market transactions from a social perspective. Well, society doesn't care about the fact that you have fixed costs that you committed to or you paid for or were sunk in the past. That concept of producer surplus only looks at how society is benefiting you in the present and moving forward. So I guess the main point is, I can simply say this, you guys can memorize it, but there is a conceptual basis for it, and that's what I was trying to give the justification for. But producer surplus is just total revenue minus variable cost, okay? And another way to say that is, remember that profits are total revenue minus total costs, right? So if I add back to profits fixed costs, then I get the same calculation. I get total revenue minus only variable costs. So I'm going to put TR minus VC, and then I'm going to say that's equal to profit plus FC. So this is the equation. Can you guys see that fine? So, so we got producer surplus for leader follower is the sum of the producer surplus for each of the producers. But remember that producer surplus is profit plus fixed cost. So or it's, you know, kind of like this, you might call it a baby profit calculation, where you take your total revenue and you only subtract off your variable costs. And so what you'd have to do to answer this question is you could calculate total surplus under competition from the picture that you have, but then to calculate total surplus under leader follower, you got to compute the consumer surplus, which you did, and then you got to calculate the producer surplus for each of the firms. And so you got to calculate, and we did I think the profit already for firm 2 here in question 11. So we can take the 114 and then add back the 208, and then we'll get back what we had before we went through the calculation, which was like 129 or something like that. But then you have to do the same thing for firm 1. So then you'll have the producer surplus for firm 1, and then the producer surplus for firm 2. You add it to the consumer surplus in question 12, and then you have total surplus under the leader follower. And then if you take the difference between total surplus under competition and total surplus under the leader follower, you get this number. So
Okay.
so it's kind of an involved calculation. And then this is a good one because you would have had to compute this already. So this will help us, right? It says that the leader follower total surplus is that. So I guess this is a good place to leave off because we're out of time. But you guys can do a 13 and 14. You have the answers. And if you compute the total surplus under competition correctly, and then subtract that from this number, you should get a difference of 15. So go ahead and work on that. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.